If you're looking to add some Texas style to your acoustic blues, look no further than Lightnin Hopkins. I mean, his playing is incredible. It's got such range. It's wild and intense in one moment and cool and smooth in the next. And that depth and, of course, those fast little licks that he would throw out really draw you into his music, but they can make it seem a bit out of reach for a lot of players. And while mastering his blues can take a lifetime, I mean, every time I think I get close, I realize just how far I am away, but we can borrow a few key elements that capture the spirit of his playing right away. In this lesson, I'll show you 3 Lightnin Hopkins moves to add that Texas blues attitude to your guitar. These techniques can be the difference between playing ordinary blues or creating some music that really moves. So let's dig in. So many of Lightnin's great tunes like Mojo Hand and Let's Pull a Party use the standard basic shuffle pattern as its backbone, but of course he played it with his own style and he changed chords whenever he saw fit and added some really slick little rhythmic tricks, which we covered in Tuesday Blues 452. But since that Lightnin shuffle is front and center, it's kind of easy to think that that's all there is to it. But one of my favorite things about his rhythm playing is how he breaks up the shuffle with a few big strums. Let's call that the Lightning Shuffle. It's that famous blues riff that goes back and forth between the 2nd fret and the 4th fret while chucking along on the open 6th string and that 5th string as well. And I'm playing this with a thumb pick just to get this really chunky sound, but it's optional. You could play this with your bare thumb, but either way, the thumb is pretty busy plucking out that shuffle rhythm. That's the important part. We don't want 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and we want 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, just getting that loping sound, right? We speed it up a little bit when you can, and then add that little upstroke on the and of 4. Just a really cool way to make a statement at the end of a measure. Then what we're gonna do is run this through a 12-bar blues progression, 4 on E, then do everything that we just did, just move it up to the 5th and 4th strings to play 2 bars over A. Then back to E for 2 bars. But here, we've got a chord change, and it's a big one. We are changing into the 5 chord. This is a B7 in this key, although technically we're tuned down a half a step, so I know this is a B flat 7, but we're going to call it a B7 because that's commonly the shape that we would think of for this chord. So with this, we want to get some open strings ringing. We want to do some brush ups that aren't just choked out like before, like these, right? We want to let them ring and really make a statement in this big, important measure. So that's what we're going to do. You can change up the pattern, but let's dig into this one as an example. We've got the thumb going and then brushing up through those top 3 strings. Then the thumb comes back and plays the 5th string and then the open 5th string, just to get a little movement going in this from the bass perspective. Now, when we come back, we're going to pinch with that brush up. So bass and the brush up, and then the brush up by itself. Bass by itself, and then we can take this idea and play it over an A7, our next chord, as well. Right? But now there's a little trick that you want to get down with the A7, and it's all about that move from the 3rd fret down to the 2nd. That won't work unless you've got a good bar happening here, and that bar should cover the 4th string, 3rd string, 2nd string, and the 1st. Even though the 1st is not normally important in an A7 chord, it is when we add that little melody movement, just by lifting off with from the 3rd fret to the 2nd fret, right? And we can play a similar pattern, and these 2 bars work really well together. Right? Now, I really like ending that A7 with 2 on beats 3 and 4. The next 2 bars are the turnaround, and we could certainly do a classic blues turnaround here, which is perfectly fine, and Lightnin certainly does that with his own flair. But what we're going to do here is keep that big sound of the strumming going and cycle through some chords. This puts a lot of movement in the turnaround, and it's a great way to end the progression with some energy. Let's take a look. We're changing between an E7 and an A7 in the first measure of this turnaround, and then an E7 and B7 in the second measure. And the strumming pattern can be varied to your liking. You can change it up and go by feel here, but let's cover what I just did as a place to start. We strum down through the E major chord, and then down again, followed by an upstroke. Now this upstroke is kind of gentle. We're not making a big deal about it because it's really through the open strings as I'm changing chords to my A7. From here, that was a downstroke. Once we get to the chord, then up, then down, and then an up with those open strings again. Now we're ready to change for the second measure of this turnaround. And we're going to do a down, up, through an E chord. Then we're going to just hit the sixth string by itself. It's kind of a stumble to set me up for an early move to the B7, which we're going to let that hang and then strum out of the measure with just some down and up strokes. So let's take a look at this slowly. So over that B7, it was up, down, up with that open string strum to head into the top of the next measure, which might well be your Lightning Shuffle. That's it. Work on adding a few strumming patterns to the big moments to get a little lightning attitude in your blues. It's a great way to add some style to the standard shuffle, but it's really not the only way. We can definitely do more. Like we said, there's range. We know when to get big, but we also know when to pull back and get a little bit subtle, like he does with some walking bass lines. There's a Texas boogie pattern that he loved to play, and it creates some movement while staying rooted in that shuffle rhythm, in the groove. It's a perfect blend of feeling laid back while keeping things moving forward. So let's take a walk. If you thought we were going to give your thumb a break, not yet. Hang in there though. But for now, we're going to continue that shuffle rhythm and we're going to play it entirely with the thumb. But instead of chucking along on two strings with this riff, we're going to play a Texas boogie line along one string at a time, starting with the sixth string, and each note will get pumped twice with that shuffle, right? Then we move up to the fourth fret. Then we go up a string to the fifth string and walk up the second fret, the fourth fret, the fifth fret, and then we just reverse course. So the entire line sounds like this. We do it again over E, and then the cool thing is we can do it over A. The exact pattern, just shift up your two strings and go back to E. But here, leading into that big moment, we know we're headed to the 5 chord, we might want to do something different. Right? We can sneak up, let that hang for a moment perhaps, as we head into our 5 chord. You can play with the timing there and have some fun. That is a really cool way to just lead you into what we just covered with the strumming over the 5 chord and the 4 chord. Including that ending, very strummy turnaround. What I love about these boogie lines is how they change the feel without being overly flashy. It's subtle but effective. And when you go back to the shuffle afterward, it hits even harder. So these walks, they're great. But to me, nothing captures Lightning style more than when he suddenly leaves the rhythm, the groove completely and takes us somewhere unexpected. The unexpected place, it's way up at the 12th fret, where Lightnin would abruptly take a short solo. And playing high up the fretboard is in stark contrast to the bassy shuffle that we've really locked into. And what blows me away is how he was able to keep things grooving during these breaks with absolutely no bass, no chords, no second guitar, just him and a few notes way up the neck. some of the most fun measures in the lesson, but they can also be the trickiest because we're changing rather abruptly from the open position all the way up here to the 12th fret on a single string, the first string. And not only are we covering that big distance, but we're also shifting from our big strummy turnaround, which, by the way, when I play this, I love to come up and strum it with the thumb pick over the fretboard. That's optional, but if you can, try it out on your guitar. It's a cool sound. But no matter how you strum it, when we end it, at the very end, I want you to brush up through the open strings. I call this the breath stroke because it feels like we're taking a breath before a chord change. But in this case, we're not changing chords so much as changing positions. So we're using that hang time, those open strings ringing, to really land this 12th fret with the ring finger on the first string. But also set yourself up so that at the same time, the middle and the index finger come down on strings 6, 5, 4, 3, and 2 to mute them out. So not only are they not ringing anymore, but when we hit them, because we probably are, we're coming from that big strum movement, we get a cool bluesy rake sounding. And then what we do is launch into the lick. And then pop the 6th string. 1 and 2 and 3, pop. 1 and 2 and 3, pop. Now the third time around, we play through a full measure, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and then we start to move. All right, and what we're doing there is walking down most of the notes of the E major pentatonic scale, from the 12th fret to the 9th on the first, same on the second string, and then the 11th, and we should finish at the 9th, right? That's the expected note. That's the E major pentatonic scale. If I play it like this, you'll probably recognize it. Right? But what we're doing is walking down it. But instead of hitting that E, which is a little expected, we're going to hit the C note on the 4th string, 10th fret. It's a little spicy note, and we're going to give it a little vibrato and let it hang. How long, how short, who knows? But when it feels good, we're going to go from here back into our Lightnin shuffle in A, and then back to E. So let's recap here. We've got our strum happening, over the fretboard or not, but we've got that all-important breath stroke enabling that big shift. 1 and 2 and 3, pop. 1 and 2 and 3, pop. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Let it hang. This jump up to the 12th fret works so well in part because it's direct, it gets to the point, and it's simple. He didn't always need to use his fancy tricks and quick playing. Sometimes just a few notes played with his style got the job done. So let's bring all of this together into a complete jam. Premium members will have access to the complete tab and the interactive tab player for this jam inside the MyBGI library. Just look for Tuesday Blues Lesson 480. Earlier, I showed you how Lightnin breaks up his shuffle pattern with big strums, walking lines, and those 12th fret solos, but really to get the punch of these techniques, you have to know what makes the basic shuffle so special in the first place. So watch Tuesday Blues 452 next, where I show you the rhythmic tricks that give Lightnin Shuffle that unmistakable Texas attitude. I'll see you there. Until then, practice smart and play on.